I never thought the worst day of my life would also become the day I was saved. But before I tell you how the most powerful wolf in the kingdom claimed me as his own in that filthy dungeon, you need to understand how I ended up there. You need to know about the man who was supposed to protect me, and how he became the monster who destroyed everything I loved. Stay with me because this story gets darker before the light breaks through, and I promise you the ending will leave you breathless. My name is Beatriz, and this is the story of how I went from being a prisoner in chains to becoming a queen. It started the day my mother married Goncalo. I was 12 years old, still naive enough to believe that stepmothers and stepfathers only existed in fairy tales as villains, not in real life. My mother, Leonor, was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She had long dark hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall of silk, and eyes the color of rich honey that seemed to hold all the warmth in the world. After my father died when I was 7, she raised me alone, working as a seamstress in our small village on the outskirts of the Silverwood Pack territory. We weren't wolves. We were human, living on the fringes of their world, always aware of the supernatural power that surrounded us but never truly part of it. My mother used to tell me stories about the werewolves, about their strength and their honor, about the Alpha King who ruled over all the packs with wisdom and justice. I used to dream about meeting a werewolf, about seeing one transform under the full moon. I thought they were magnificent creatures. I had no idea how wrong I could be. Goncalo came into our lives like a summer storm, sudden and overwhelming. He was a merchant, he said, traveling between territories selling fine fabrics and precious stones. He was handsome in a sharp, angular way, with black hair streaked with silver and eyes that were too calculating, though I didn't recognize it then. He courted my mother with expensive gifts and flowery words, and I watched her fall in love with the promise of security, of never having to struggle again. They were married within 3 months. The first year was bearable. Goncalo largely ignored me, which I preferred to the alternative. He would disappear for weeks at a time on his merchant trips, and my mother and I would fall back into our comfortable routine. But I noticed things, small things. The way his eyes would follow me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way his smile never reached his eyes. The way my mother seemed to grow smaller and quieter in his presence. Then 2 weeks after my 14th birthday my mother got sick. It started with a cough, then a fever that wouldn't break. Within a month she was bedridden, her beautiful face gaunt and pale, her honey eyes dimmed with pain. Goncalo brought doctors, healers, even a witch from the Eastern Territories, but nothing worked. I sat by her bedside every day, holding her frail hand, begging her not to leave me. "Beatriz, my darling girl," she whispered one night, her voice barely audible. "Promise me you'll be strong. Promise me you'll survive, no matter what happens." "You're going to get better, Mama," I insisted, tears streaming down my face. "You have to." But she didn't. 3 days later, Leonor died in her sleep, and I was left alone with a man who was not my father, in a house that no longer felt like home. The change in Goncalo was immediate. The very night of my mother's funeral, after the last mourner had left and I sat numbly in my room, he came to my door. He didn't knock. He simply pushed it open and stood there, silhouetted against the lamplight from the hallway, and I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "You will earn your keep in this house," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Tomorrow you start working. You'll clean, cook, and take over your mother's sewing. I've lost my investment in her, and you're going to make up for it." Investment. He called my mother an investment. I wanted to scream at him to tell him to leave, but I was 14 years old and terrified, so I simply nodded. The next 2 years were a nightmare of exhaustion and fear. I worked from dawn until long after dark, my fingers bleeding from the needle, my back aching from scrubbing floors. Goncalo watched me constantly, criticizing everything I did, finding fault where there was none. He never hit me, not at first, but his words were weapons, carefully crafted to cut deeper than any blade. "Worthless, just like your mother. You're lucky I let you stay here. No one else would want you. You think you're special. You're nothing. Less than nothing." I endured because I had nowhere else to go. I endured because some small part of me still believed it would get better. I endured because my mother had asked me to be strong. But everything changed the week I turned 16. I had blossomed over those 2 years despite the hardship, growing from a gangly child into a young woman. I didn't see it myself, too exhausted and downtrodden to look in mirrors, but I saw it reflected in Goncalo's eyes. The way he looked at me had changed from contempt to something far more sinister, something that made my skin crawl and my heart race with terror. He started finding excuses to touch me. A hand on my shoulder that lingered too long. Fingers brushing my arm when he handed me something. Standing too close, invading my space, his breath hot on my neck. I tried to avoid him, to be invisible, but it was impossible in that small house. Then came the night I tried to run. I had been planning it for weeks, saving small scraps of bread, hiding away a few coins I found while cleaning. I waited until Goncalo left on one of his trips, then I packed a small bag and slipped out into the darkness, heading toward the main road that would take me to the next town. I should have known better. I should have known that a man like Goncalo didn't leave anything to chance. He caught me before I'd gotten half a mile from the house. I heard the horse's hooves thundering behind me and tried to run faster, but it was useless. He rode up beside me, reached down and grabbed me by my hair, yanking me backward. I fell hard onto the dirt road, the breath knocked from my lungs, stars exploding across my vision. "Stupid girl," he hissed, dismounting. He hauled me up by my arm, his fingers digging in so hard I knew there would be bruises. "Did you really think you could leave? Did you think I wouldn't know? Let me go," I screamed, struggling against his grip. "I won't stay there with you." His hand cracked across my face, the first time he'd ever struck me, and the force of it snapped my head to the side. My cheek exploded in pain, and I tasted blood in my mouth. "You'll do exactly what I tell you," he said, his voice deadly calm. "And if you ever try to run again, I'll make sure you regret it." He threw me over the horse like a sack of grain and rode back to the house. I cried the entire way, my tears mixing with the blood from my split lip, my mother's voice echoing in my head. "Be strong, Beatriz. Survive." But I didn't know how much more I could survive. When we got back to the house, Goncalo dragged me inside and locked me in the cellar. It was cold and dark, smelling of earth and rot, and I huddled in the corner, shaking with fear and fury. He kept me down there for 3 days with only water, and when he finally let me out I was too weak to fight. "If you try to leave again," he said, "I won't bring you back. I'll kill you and bury you where no one will ever find you. Do you understand?" Understood. I understood that I was completely alone, completely trapped, and that the man who was supposed to be my guardian was capable of murder. For the next few months I became a ghost in that house, moving silently, speaking only when spoken to, avoiding Goncalo as much as possible. But I could feel his patience wearing thin. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched when he looked at me, in the way his hands curled into fists. He was waiting for something, planning something, and the anticipation was almost worse than anything he'd done so far. Then, one cold morning in early winter, everything came crashing down. I woke to shouting outside the house. Male voices, rough and angry. I crept to the window and peered out to see 3 men confronting Goncalo in the yard. They were large, muscular, with an aura of barely contained violence that made my blood run cold. One of them grabbed Goncalo by his shirt and lifted him off his feet. "You owe Sebastio 20 gold pieces," the man snarled. "He's done waiting." Sebastio. I knew that name. Everyone in the territory knew that name. Sebastio was a lone shark, a criminal who operated in the shadows of the werewolf packs, preying on humans who had nowhere else to turn. He was dangerous, ruthless, and people who crossed him disappeared. Goncalo had borrowed money from Sebastio. "I'll get it," Goncalo said, his voice strained. "I just need more time." "No more time," the man said, dropping Goncalo to the ground. "You pay by the end of the week, or we take payment in other ways." They left, and I watched Goncalo stand there, breathing hard, his face twisted with fury and fear. Then, slowly, he turned and looked at the house. Looked at the window where I was standing. Our eyes met and I saw it. I saw the decision he'd made. And I knew in that moment that I was about to become his payment. I tried to run again that night. I waited until he was asleep, then crept out of my room down the stairs toward the front door. But he was waiting for me in the darkness of the hallway, and before I could scream, his hand clamped over my mouth. "I told you what would happen if you tried to leave again," he whispered in my ear. This time he didn't just lock me in the cellar. He chained me. Heavy iron manacles around my wrists, connected to a chain bolted to the stone wall. The metal was cold against my skin, chafing my wrists raw. He threw a thin blanket at me and left me in the darkness, and I heard the cellar door slam shut and the lock click into place. I don't know how long I was down there. Days blurred together in the darkness. Goncalo brought me food and water once a day, never speaking, his eyes avoiding mine. I tried to talk to him at first, tried to plead with him, but he was like stone, immune to my desperation. Then one day he came down the stairs with another man. A man I'd never seen before, short and greasy with small, cruel eyes. They stood in the doorway, talking in low voices, and I caught fragments of their conversation. "Virgin?" the stranger asked. "Yes," Goncalo confirmed. "Then she's worth 30 pieces. I'll take her tonight." Terror seized me. He was selling me. Goncalo was selling me to this man, and I knew with absolute certainty what my fate would be. I would disappear into whatever dark hole this stranger had crawled out of, and no one would ever know what happened to me. No one would care. "Mama," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm sorry." I tried to be strong. But that night something happened that changed everything. I was alone in the darkness, the chains cutting into my wrists, when I heard shouting from above. Not angry shouting but scared shouting. Panic. Then came a sound that made my blood freeze. A wolf's howl, deep and primal, filled with dominance and fury. The cellar door burst open, and I heard heavy footsteps descending. Multiple people. I shrank back against the wall, terrified, the chain rattling as I moved. I could smell smoke, could hear more shouting from outside the house. Then a light appeared, a torch held high, and I saw them. 3 massive wolves, their forms still shifting back to human, pulling on clothes as they transformed. They were terrifying and magnificent, their eyes glowing in the torchlight, their presence filling the small cellar with raw power. And behind them came someone else. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a powerful build. His hair was dark gold, like honey kissed by sunlight, and fell to his shoulders in thick waves. His eyes were the color of amber, almost glowing in the dim light, and they held an intensity that made it hard to breathe. He wore simple dark clothing, but there was no mistaking the authority that radiated from him, the power that made even the other wolves step aside deferentially. This was an alpha, and not just any alpha. He scanned the cellar, his eyes moving over the sparse, filthy space, and then they landed on me. Chained to the wall, bruised, scared, barely clothed in a torn dress. For a moment time seemed to stop. Those amber eyes locked with mine, and I felt something pass between us, something electric and terrifying and inexplicable. He moved toward me, and I pressed myself back against the wall, my heart hammering in my chest. He was a werewolf, a creature of immense power, and I was completely helpless. But when he crouched down in front of me, his movements were careful, controlled. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice deep and rough, edged with barely contained rage. I couldn't speak. My voice was trapped in my throat, my mind unable to process what was happening. One of the other wolves spoke from behind him. "The man upstairs claims she's his stepdaughter. Says she's a thief and a runaway." The alpha's eyes never left mine. "Is that true?" I shook my head, finally finding my voice. "No, he was going to sell me." Something dangerous flashed in those amber eyes. The temperature in the cellar seemed to drop, and I felt the power rolling off him in waves. The other wolves shifted uneasily. "Get these chains off her," he commanded. "Now!" One of the wolves hurried forward with a set of tools and began working on the locks. The alpha stayed crouched in front of me, his presence somehow both terrifying and comforting. When the first manacle fell away, I gasped in pain as blood rushed back into my hand. My wrists were raw and bleeding, the skin torn from struggling against the iron. The alpha's jaw clenched. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and gently took my wrist in his large hand. His touch was surprisingly gentle, his thumb carefully avoiding the damaged skin as he examined the wound. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Beatriz," I whispered. "Beatriz," he repeated, and the way he said it, like a prayer or a promise, made something flutter in my chest. "My name is Rodrigo. I'm the Alpha King of the Silverwood Territories." Alpha King. Course he was. No one else could carry that much power, that much authority. I had dreamed of meeting the Alpha King when I was a child, but never like this. Never as a broken, chained prisoner in a cellar. The second manacle came free, and I cradled my damaged wrists against my chest, biting my lip to keep from crying out. "Can you stand?" Rodrigo asked. I nodded, though I wasn't sure it was true. I hadn't stood properly in days. He held out his hand, palm up, offering rather than demanding. I hesitated for only a moment before placing my trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and he helped me to my feet. My legs nearly gave out, but he was there, steadying me, his other hand coming to rest lightly on my waist. I looked up at him, at this powerful creature who could have snapped me in half without effort, and saw something in his eyes that I didn't understand. Something protective and possessive and fierce. "Take her upstairs," one of the other wolves said. "We need to deal with the man who did this." But Rodrigo didn't move. He continued staring down at me, his brow furrowed as if he was trying to solve a complex puzzle. Then, slowly, he lifted my hand and inhaled deeply near my wrist, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, they were glowing brighter, almost burning with inner light. "She's mine," he said, his voice resonating with power and finality. The other wolves froze. One of them, a man with dark hair and a scar across his jaw, stepped forward. "My lord, she's human. She can't be." "She's mine," Rodrigo repeated, and this time it wasn't just a statement. It was a command, absolute and unquestionable. "My mate." The word hung in the air between us. I knew what it meant in werewolf culture. It meant chosen one, destined partner, the other half of a soul. But humans couldn't be mates to werewolves. It was impossible, wasn't it? "That's not possible," I whispered. Rodrigo's eyes softened as he looked at me. "It's rare but not impossible. Can feel it, Beatriz. Bon. You're my mate." I didn't know what to say, what to think. My mind was reeling, trying to process everything that had happened in the last few minutes. I had gone from being sold by my stepfather to being claimed by the Alpha King as his mate. It was too much, too fast. "I don't understand," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't have to understand right now," Rodrigo said gently. He released my wrist and instead cupped my face, his thumb carefully wiping away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. "Right now you just need to trust me. Can you do that?" Could I? This stranger, this werewolf, this king was asking me to trust him. But what choice did I have? Even if he was lying, even if this was some kind of trick, he was still offering me a way out of this nightmare. "Yes," I whispered. He nodded, satisfied, and then swept me up into his arms as easily as if I weighed nothing. I gasped, instinctively clutching at his shirt, but he held me securely against his chest. "No one will ever chain you again," he said, his voice a low promise. "No one will ever hurt you again. I swear it on my life and my crown." He carried me up the stairs, out of that dark cellar that had been my prison. The other wolves followed, silent and watchful. When we emerged into the main house, I saw Goncalo being held by 2 more wolves. His face bruised and bleeding, his eyes wide with terror. When he saw me in Rodrigo's arms, his face went white. "Please, I didn't know she was important, Silence, Rodrigo commanded, and Goncalo's mouth snapped shut. The Alpha King's voice was colder than I'd ever heard anyone speak. "You chained an innocent girl in your cellar. You beat her. You starved her. You planned to sell her to the highest bidder. And you did all of this to a child who should have been under your protection." "She's nothing," Goncalo spat, some of his old cruelty returning. "She's human trash, just like her mother was." Rodrigo's arms tightened around me, and I felt a growl rumble through his chest. The sound was terrifying, pure predator, and Goncalo stumbled backward even though the wolves were holding him. "She," Rodrigo said, his voice deadly quiet, "is my mate, the future queen of the Silverwood territories. And you just sealed your fate." I watched as the color drained completely from Goncalo's face. He really looked at me for the first time in years, and I saw fear. Real genuine fear. But let him be afraid. Let him feel a fraction of what he'd made me feel. "Tiago," Rodrigo addressed one of the wolves. "Take him to the capital. He'll stand trial for his crimes." "It would be faster to kill him here," Tiago said. "No," Rodrigo replied. "He'll face justice properly. His crimes will be made public, and he'll answer for them." The wolves dragged Goncalo away, and his screams faded into the distance. Rodrigo carried me out of that house, out into the cold night air, and I took my first deep breath of freedom in what felt like forever. "Where are we going?" I asked quietly. "Somewhere safe," he replied. "Somewhere you can heal." There was a carriage waiting outside, elegant and clearly royal, with the silver wolf emblem of the kingdom emblazoned on the side. Rodrigo placed me gently inside on the plush seats, then climbed in after me. One of the other wolves took the driver's seat, and we began to move. I sat in stunned silence, hardly daring to believe this was real. My wrists throbbed, my body ached, and I was wearing nothing but a torn dress and a thin blanket wrapped around my shoulders. But I was free. For the first time in 2 years, the crushing weight of fear and hopelessness had lifted. "Are you cold?" Rodrigo asked. I nodded, and before I could blink, he'd shrugged out of his heavy cloak and draped it around me. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like pine forests and rain, wild and clean. I pulled it tighter around myself, grateful. "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Not for this. Not for anything." We rode in silence for a while. I snuck glances at him from under my lashes, trying to understand this man who had appeared like something out of a dream and claimed me as his mate. He was handsome in a way that seemed almost unfair, all strong lines and masculine beauty, but it was more than that. There was something magnetic about him, something that made me want to trust him despite everything I'd been through. "Can I ask you something?" finally said. "Anything. Why were you there? At the house?" Rodrigo's expression darkened. "We've been tracking a human trafficking ring operating in our territories. Your stepfather was connected to it. We raided his house tonight expecting to find evidence, possibly other victims. I didn't expect to find." He trailed off, his jaw clenching. "I didn't expect to find you. But you said I'm your mate. How can you know that?" He was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. When a werewolf finds their true mate, there's an instant recognition, a pull like an invisible thread connecting 2 souls. "The moment I saw you, the moment I caught your scent, I knew. It's not something I can explain in words you'd understand. It's instinct, bone deep and absolute. But I'm human. Yes. That doesn't bother you." He looked at me fully then, his amber eyes intense. "Beatriz, I've been alive for over 200 years. In that time I've met thousands of people, wolves and humans alike. I've seen every corner of my kingdom and beyond. And never, not once, have I felt what I felt the moment I saw you. You could be human, wolf, or anything in between, and it wouldn't matter. You're mine and I'm yours. That's all that matters. 200 years old. I'd forgotten that werewolves lived much longer than humans, that the Alpha King would have seen generations come and go. What did that mean for us, for whatever this was between us? What happens now? Yes. Now we go to the capital. You'll stay in the palace, under my protection, until you're fully healed. And then we'll figure out the rest together. And if I don't want to be your mate. The words came out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted them. But I had to know. Had to know if I had any choice in this. To my surprise, Rodrigo didn't look angry. Instead, he looked sad. Then I'll respect that. The mate bond is powerful, Beatriz, but it's not a chain. It's not like those manacles that held you. You always have a choice. Always. His words settled something in me, some last remaining fear. He could have forced me, could have used his power and authority to make me comply. But he wasn't. He was giving me a choice, even though I could see in his eyes how much it cost him to say it. I don't want to go back there, I said quietly. To that house, to that life. I can't. You won't, he promised. That part of your life is over. Whatever comes next, it will be different. Better. I swear it. I believed him. Maybe I was foolish to trust so quickly, to put my faith in a man I'd known for less than an hour. But something in my soul recognized him, responded to him, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. The rest of the journey passed in silence. I dozed fitfully, exhausted beyond measure, and each time I woke, Rodrigo was there, watching over me with those intense amber eyes. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I saw it, the capital city of the Silverwood Kingdom, rising from the morning mist like something out of a dream. And at its heart, gleaming in the early light, was the palace. My new home. My new life. My new beginning. We're here, Rodrigo said softly. I sat up straighter, taking in the magnificent view. The palace was enormous, all white stone and soaring towers, surrounded by gardens that even in winter looked beautiful. People were already moving about the streets, starting their day, and I felt a flutter of nervousness in my stomach. Everyone will know, won't they? Yes. That I'm human. Yes. And they'll judge me for it. Rodrigo reached over and took my hand, carefully avoiding my injured wrists. Some will. Probably many will. But they'll learn, just as I hope you'll learn, that you're exactly where you're meant to be. That you're strong enough for this, brave enough, worthy enough. I see it in you, Beatriz. Even after everything you've survived, there's a fire in your eyes. Don't let anyone extinguish it. The carriage rolled through the palace gates, and servants rushed out to meet us. Rodrigo stepped out first, then turned to help me down. I pulled his cloak tighter around myself, suddenly very aware of my appearance. Filthy, bruised, wearing torn clothing. But Rodrigo kept his hand on the small of my back, a steady, reassuring presence. This is Beatriz, he announced to the gathering crowd of servants and guards. His voice carried the weight of command. She is under my personal protection. Anyone who disrespects her or causes her harm answers to me directly. Is that understood? A chorus of "Yes, my lord" echoed around the courtyard. A woman stepped forward, middle-aged and kindly-looking, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She curtsied to Rodrigo, then turned to me with warm brown eyes. My lady, I'm Mariana, the head housekeeper. If you'll come with me, I'll show you to your chambers and help you get settled. I looked at Rodrigo, uncertain. Go, he said gently. You need rest and care. I'll check on you later. I nodded and followed Mariana into the palace. The interior was even more magnificent than the outside. All marble floors and soaring ceilings, tapestries and paintings covering every wall. I tried not to stare like a country bumpkin, but it was impossible not to be awed. Mariana led me up a grand staircase and down a long hallway, finally stopping at a set of ornate double doors. She pushed them open, revealing a suite of rooms so beautiful I actually gasped. The main room was enormous, with a four-poster bed large enough to sleep 4 people, draped in silk curtains. There were plush rugs on the floor, a fireplace crackling with warmth, elegant furniture, and windows that overlooked the palace gardens. Through another doorway, I could see a private bathing room with a tub the size of a small pond. This can't be for me, I stammered. Mariana smiled. These are the chambers reserved for the Alpha King's mate. They've been empty for a very long time. She gestured to the bathing room. I've already had the maids draw you a hot bath. Take as long as you need. I'll have food sent up, and a healer to tend to your wounds. After that you should rest. Thank you, I said, overwhelmed. She patted my arm gently. You're safe now, child. Whatever you've been through, it's over. You're home. I didn't know if I could believe that yet, but I wanted to. After Mariana left, I shed the torn dress and Rodrigo's cloak and sank into the hot bath. The water stung my wounded wrists at first, but then the warmth began to soothe my aching muscles. I scrubbed away days of grime, watching the water turn gray, and by the time I finally emerged, I felt more human than I had in weeks. There was a soft nightgown laid out on the bed, far finer than anything I'd ever worn. I slipped it on, marveling at how it felt against my clean skin. As promised, a healer arrived shortly after, a gentle older man named Duarte who carefully cleaned and bandaged my wrists, applied salve to my bruises, and left me with instructions to rest. Food appeared next, brought by a young maid who curtsied nervously. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, cheese, fruits I'd never even seen before. I ate until I was full for the first time in years, then crawled into that enormous bed. I should have fallen asleep immediately. I was exhausted, my body crying out for rest. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cellar, felt the chains, heard Goncalo's voice. I was free, but my mind didn't know it yet. A soft knock on the door made me sit up. Come in, I called. Rodrigo entered, and despite everything, my heart skipped a beat. He'd changed into clean clothes, his hair still damp as if he'd recently bathed. He looked powerful and regal, every inch a king, and I felt suddenly very small in comparison. I'm sorry to disturb you, he said. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. I'm fine, I said. More than fine. It's too much. He walked further into the room, his movements careful, as if he didn't want to spook me. It's not too much. It's exactly what you deserve. He paused by the bed, his eyes scanning my face. You look better. I feel better. The healer said my wrists should heal completely in a few weeks. Good. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, Can you sleep? I hesitated, then shook my head. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that cellar. Understanding flickered in his eyes. That will fade with time. But if you'd like, could stay. Just until you fall asleep. Sometimes having someone nearby helps. I should have said no. We barely knew each other. This was all moving too fast. But I remembered the warmth of his hand holding mine, the steady strength of his presence, and I found myself nodding. Please. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. His posture relaxed but alert. Tell me something about yourself, Beatriz. Something from before all of this. I thought for a moment. My mother used to sing to me. Old folk songs she learned from her grandmother. I can't remember all the words now, but I remember the melodies. Did she teach you to sew? Yes. She said it was important for a woman to have a skill, something that was hers. She could make anything beautiful. Dresses, tapestries, even simple handkerchiefs became works of art under her fingers. Do you enjoy it? Sewing? I used to. Before Goncalo made it feel like a punishment. I'd like to enjoy it again someday. Rodrigo nodded. Then you will. And anything else you want to learn you can. The palace has a library, artists, musicians, scholars. All of it is at your disposal now. Why are you being so kind to me? I asked quietly. Is it just because of the mate bond? He considered the question carefully. The mate bond is real, Beatrice. It's powerful. But even without it, I would want to help you. What was done to you was unconscionable. You deserve protection, safety, care. Those are not negotiable, bond or no bond. What if I'm not what you hoped for? In a mate. A small smile curved his lips. What if you are exactly what I hoped for? And I just didn't know it until I saw you. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I simply pulled the blankets up to my chin and let the warmth and safety of the room settle over me. Rodrigo began talking in a low, soothing voice, telling me about the kingdom, about the territories, about the wolves who served under him. His voice was deep and calming, and slowly, finally, my eyes grew heavy. The last thing I remember before sleep claimed me was the feeling of safety, of being watched over by someone who would protect me. For the first time in years, I slept without nightmares. The next few weeks passed in a blur of healing and adjustment. True to his word, Rodrigo gave me space while making sure I had everything I needed. Mariana became a constant, comforting presence, teaching me the ways of the palace, introducing me to others, helping me navigate this strange new world. The palace physician, a stern woman named Katerina, monitored my recovery with meticulous care. My wrists healed slowly but steadily, the angry red marks fading to pink scars that she assured me would eventually become barely visible. She also prescribed nutritious meals to help me regain the weight I'd lost, and slowly, my reflection in the mirror began to show someone who looked less like a ghost and more like a living person. But the physical healing was easier than the emotional. I still woke in the night sometimes, heart pounding, convinced I could feel the weight of chains on my wrists. I avoided dark, enclosed spaces. Loud voices made me flinch. And I struggled with the reality of who I now was, or was supposed to be, the Alpha King's mate. The palace staff treated me with respect, though I could see the questions in their eyes. How had a human girl become the king's mate? What made me special? Was I truly worthy? I asked myself the same questions every day. Rodrigo visited me regularly, but he was careful never to push, never to demand more than I was ready to give. Sometimes we would walk together in the gardens, and he would tell me stories about his long life, about the kingdom's history, about the responsibilities of being Alpha King. Other times we would sit in the library, reading in comfortable silence. He was patient, gentle, giving me time to adjust, to heal, to decide what I wanted. But I could feel the bond between us growing stronger. Every time he entered a room, my heart would race. Every time our hands accidentally brushed, electricity would spark between us. Every time he smiled at me, warmth would flood through my chest. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. One evening, about a month after my arrival, Rodrigo invited me to dinner in his private dining room. I dressed carefully in one of the beautiful gowns that had appeared in my wardrobe, a deep blue that Mariana said brought out my eyes, and made my way through the palace corridors with only minimal help from the servants. Rodrigo was already there when I arrived, standing by the window, looking out over the city below. He turned when he heard me enter, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. It was hunger and admiration and something deeper, something that made my skin tingle. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," I replied, feeling my cheeks heat. Even after all these weeks, I still wasn't used to compliments. Dinner was a quiet, intimate affair. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing easily. He asked about my day, about a book I'd been reading, about whether I'd enjoyed the music lesson I'd attended. I asked him about his council meetings, about a dispute between two packs he'd mentioned the day before, about his plans for the spring planting season. It felt natural, comfortable, like we'd been doing this for years rather than weeks. After dinner, we moved to sit by the fireplace, and Rodrigo poured us each a glass of wine. I took a small sip, letting the warmth spread through me, and gathered my courage. "Rodrigo, can I ask you something?" "Always. What happens next? With us, I mean. I know what the mate bond is, I know what it means in your culture, but I don't know what you expect from me." He set his glass down and turned to face me fully. "I expect nothing, Beatrice. I want everything, but I expect nothing. The bond is there, yes, and it will continue to grow stronger. But you're still healing, still finding your place here. I won't rush you. When you're ready, if you're ready, we can explore what this bond means. Until then, I'm content to simply be near you. And if I'm never ready, pain flashed across his face, quickly masked. Then I'll learn to live with it. You're not a prisoner here, Beatrice. You never will be. If you decide this life isn't what you want, if you decide I'm not what you want, you're free to leave. I'll make sure you have everything you need to build whatever life you choose. His words should have relieved me, but instead they made my chest ache. The thought of leaving, of walking away from him, felt wrong. Not because I felt obligated to stay, but because I was beginning to realize that I didn't want to leave. I don't want to go, I said quietly. I'm scared, Rodrigo. I'm scared of trusting again, of letting someone close. But I don't want to go. He reached out slowly and took my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm, carefully avoiding my healing wrists. Then stay scared. Stay cautious. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting for as long as it takes. I looked down at our joined hands, at the way his so completely engulfed mine, and felt something shift inside me. This man, this powerful alpha king who could command armies and rule kingdoms, was willing to wait for me, to let me heal at my own pace, to give me the choice that had been stolen from me so many times before. Tell me about the mate bond, I said. How it really works. Rodrigo settled back, keeping my hand in his. For wolves, the mate bond is sacred. It's a connection that goes beyond the physical, beyond even the emotional. It's spiritual, two souls recognizing each other across time and space. When we find our mate, we feel complete in a way we never did before. But I'm human. I can't feel what you feel. Can't you? He asked gently. Tell me honestly, Beatrice. When I'm near you, do you feel nothing? I swallowed hard. No, Phil. I don't know how to describe it. Like there's a cord connecting us. Like I'm aware of exactly where you are in a room. Like I'm calmer when you're close, and restless when you're gone. Is that the bond? His eyes lit up with something that looked like hope. Yes, human mates can feel the bond, it's just different for them. Butler. But it's there. You feel it because you are my mate, Beatrice, as surely as I am yours. What does that mean for us? Long term. It means that if you choose to accept the bond fully, you'll become my queen, my partner in all things. It means that eventually, through the bond, you'll gain some of the benefits of being connected to a wolf. Longer life, better health, increased strength. It means that we'll be bound together for as long as we both live. The weight of that settled over me. Longer life, power, position, but also commitment, responsibility, a future I had never imagined for myself. I need time, I said. Take all the time you need. But even as I said it, I knew my decision was already made. Maybe it had been made the moment he walked into that cellar. Maybe it had been made the first time he held my hand. Maybe it had been made by something larger than either of us, by fate or destiny or whatever force had brought us together. I was going to accept the bond, accept him, but on my terms when I was ready. The turning point came 2 months after my arrival at the palace. I had ventured into the city for the first time, accompanied by guards and Mariana, to visit the market. It was overwhelming at first, all the sights and sounds and smells, so different from the small village where I'd grown up. But it was also exhilarating to be out among people, to see the kingdom that would someday be partly mine to lead. I was examining some beautiful fabric at a merchant's stall when I heard a familiar voice behind me, a voice that made my blood run cold. Well, if it isn't the little princess. I spun around and there he was, Sebastio, the lone shark. He was tall and broad, with cold eyes and a cruel smile, surrounded by 3 large men who were clearly his enforcers. My guards moved closer immediately, hands on their weapons, but Sebastio just laughed. Relax. I'm not here to cause trouble. Just wanted to see the girl who got my best client arrested. He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. You cost me a lot of money, little girl. Goncalo owed me, and now he's rotting in a cell awaiting trial. Someone needs to pay that debt. She owes you nothing, one of my guards said firmly. Step away. Or what? You'll tell the Alpha King. I'm sure he'd love to hear how his precious mate is connected to my business dealings. Might make her look bad, don't you think? Something in me snapped. After weeks of healing, of finding my strength again, of learning that I didn't have to be a victim anymore, this man thought he could threaten me? In my own city. I'm connected to nothing, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Goncalo's debts are his own. And if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the king directly. I'm sure Rodrigo would love to have a conversation with you about your business practices. Sebastio's smile faltered. He hadn't expected me to stand up to him. You've got some fire in you. I can see why the king likes you. But fire can be dangerous, little girl. People get burned. Is that a threat? Ask coldly. It's advice. You're in over your head here. You think being the king's mate makes you untouchable. Think again. There are forces in this kingdom that even he can't control. Before I could respond, another voice cut through the tension. I suggest you leave. Now. Rodrigo appeared from the crowd, moving with deadly grace. His eyes blazing with fury. He must have been alerted by the guards. Sebastio paled visibly, and his enforcers took several steps back. My lord, Sebastio said, forcing a smile. I was just welcoming your mate to the city. By threatening her. Rodrigo's voice was soft, but it carried an edge that made everyone in the market stop what they were doing. By suggesting that she owes you a debt that isn't hers. By implying that she's not safe in her own kingdom. It was merely conversation. It was a threat. Against my mate. Against your future queen. Rodrigo moved to stand beside me. His presence radiating power. You have 10 seconds to remove yourself from my sight, Sebastio. And if I ever hear that you've approached her again, spoken to her, or even looked in her direction, you'll discover exactly how far my control extends. Am I clear? Sebastio nodded quickly and fled. His men scrambling after him. The market slowly returned to normal, but I was shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. Rodrigo turned to me, his eyes searching my face. Are you all right? I'm fine, I said, then laughed shakily. Actually, that was terrifying, but also, I stood up to him. I didn't run. I didn't freeze. I stood my ground. Pride shone in Rodrigo's eyes. You did. You were magnificent. I couldn't have done it without knowing you had my back. He cupped my face gently, his thumb stroking my cheek. I will always have your back, Beatriz. Always. You're never alone, never unprotected. I need you to know that. I looked up at him, at this man who had saved me, protected me, given me time to heal, and who was now looking at me like I was the most precious thing in his world. And I realized something that should have terrified me but instead filled me with certainty. I was in love with him. The mate bond had opened the door, but this feeling, this overwhelming sense of rightness when I was with him, that was all mine. My choice. My heart. Take me home, I said softly. He nodded and guided me back to the carriage, his hand never leaving the small of my back. The ride back to the palace was quiet, but the air between us felt charged, electric with possibility. When we arrived, instead of going to my chambers, I followed Rodrigo to his. He paused at the door, looking at me questioningly. Beatriz. I don't want to be apart anymore, I said. I don't want to keep pretending that this bond between us is something I'm still deciding about. I've decided, Rodrigo. I want this. I want you. I accept the maid bond. I accept all of it. The joy that flooded his face was blinding. Are you sure? There's no rush. I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He pulled me into his arms, and I went willingly, wrapping my arms around his waist and resting my head against his chest. I could hear his heart thundering, matching the rhythm of my own. I love you, he whispered into my hair. I have from the moment I saw you, and I will until my last breath. I love you too, I replied, and saying the words out loud felt like breaking free from the last chain that had bound me. He tilted my face up and kissed me, gentle at first, then deeper as I responded. It was my first kiss, and it was perfect, all warmth and sweetness and the promise of forever. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. What happens now? Yes. Now we make it official. There will be a ceremony, a bonding ritual. The whole kingdom will know that you're my mate, my queen. Are you ready for that? I thought about the girl who had been chained in a cellar, broken and scared and certain she would die there. I thought about how far I'd come, how much I'd healed, how much stronger I'd become. And I thought about the future stretching out before me, full of possibility and hope. Yes, I said firmly. I'm ready. The bonding ceremony was held under the full moon, in the palace gardens transformed into something magical. Hundreds of wolves had gathered, along with humans who served the kingdom, all dressed in their finest, all there to witness their king claim his mate. I wore a gown of silver and white, like moonlight-made fabric, that Mariana and the palace seamstresses had worked on for weeks. My hair was woven with flowers and silver ribbons. My wrists, now fully healed with only faint scars remaining, were adorned with delicate bracelets. I looked like a queen, and for the first time I felt like one. Rodrigo stood waiting for me at the center of the garden, handsome in formal attire. His eyes locked on mine as I approached. The love and pride in his gaze gave me strength, settled my nerves. The ceremony itself was beautiful, a blend of werewolf tradition and human custom. We spoke vows to each other, promising love, loyalty, protection. Rodrigo marked me as his mate, a small bite on my shoulder that would identify me as his to all other wolves. I felt the bond snap into place fully, completely, and it was like coming home to a place I'd never been but had always belonged. When it was over, when we were officially bonded, Rodrigo pulled me into his arms and kissed me in front of everyone, and the crowd erupted in cheers and howls. I was no longer just Beatriz, the girl who had survived. I was Beatriz, queen of the Silverwood territories, mate to the Alpha King. The celebration lasted long into the night. There was music and dancing, food and wine, joy and laughter. I met wolves from every pack in the kingdom, humans from every territory, all come to celebrate this union. And though there were still some skeptical looks, still some who questioned whether a human could truly be their queen, there were many more who welcomed me with open hearts. As the moon reached its peak, Rodrigo and I slipped away from the celebration, escaping to the palace roof where we could be alone. We sat close together, my head on his shoulder, looking out over the kingdom that was now ours to protect. Do you ever regret it? I asked quietly. That your mate is human? Never, he said firmly. You're exactly who I needed, Beatriz. You've survived things that would have broken most people. You've shown courage and strength and grace. You've taken a life that was stolen from you and built something beautiful from the ashes. How could I ever regret that? I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You were already strong, Beatriz. I just helped you remember it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Rodrigo said, I have something to tell you. About Goncalo. My body tensed slightly. What about him? His trial concluded yesterday. He was found guilty of human trafficking, child abuse, attempted sale of a person, and numerous other charges. He's been sentenced to life imprisonment in the deepest cells of the kingdom, where he'll never see sunlight again. I waited for the rush of satisfaction, the sense of justice served. But instead I just felt tired. Me. Good, I said simply. If you want to see him, to confront him, I can arrange it. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No. He doesn't deserve any more of my time, my energy, my thoughts. He's part of my past, and my past doesn't get to control my future anymore. Rodrigo pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Wise as well as beautiful. I learned from the best. Life as queen was both easier and harder than I expected. The easier part was working alongside Rodrigo, learning the intricacies of ruling a kingdom, meeting with councils and advisors, mediating disputes, planning for the future. He was an excellent teacher, patient and thorough, and I discovered that I had a talent for leadership, for seeing solutions where others saw only problems. The harder part was winning over those who doubted me. There were wolves who believed humans had no place in their world, who saw my position as an insult to their traditions. There were humans who resented my sudden rise to power, who saw me as a traitor to my own kind. I faced criticism, challenges, and occasionally outright hostility. But I had learned something important during my time in that cellar, during those dark days when I thought I would never be free. I was stronger than I knew. Every challenge I faced, I met head-on. Every criticism, I answered with grace and wisdom. Every doubt I proved wrong through my actions. Slowly, gradually, I won them over. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to rule effectively, to make real changes in the kingdom, to help bridge the gap between wolves and humans. I established schools where human children could learn alongside wolf pups, teaching tolerance and understanding from a young age. I created laws protecting the rights of humans living in wolf territories, ensuring they had recourse against abuse and exploitation. I worked with Rodrigo to dismantle the human trafficking networks that had operated in the shadows, networks that had almost claimed me as a victim. And through it all, Rodrigo was beside me, my partner in every sense of the word. We ruled together, loved together, built a life together that was more beautiful than anything I could have imagined in my darkest moments. 5 years after that night in the cellar, I stood in the same palace gardens where we had held our bonding ceremony, but this time for a different celebration. In my arms was a tiny bundle, our daughter, born just 3 days before. She had her father's amber eyes and my dark hair, and she was absolutely perfect. Rodrigo stood beside me, one arm around my waist, looking down at our child with such overwhelming love that it made my heart ache. "What should we name her?" he asked softly. I thought about my mother, about her strength and grace, about how she had taught me to survive. "Leonor," I said. "After my mother." "Leonor," Rodrigo repeated and smiled. "It's perfect. He's perfect. You're perfect." I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the unshakable certainty of the bond between us. "We're perfect," I corrected. And we were. Not perfect in the sense of flawless, but perfect in the sense of whole. Complete. Exactly as we were meant to be. Sometimes late at night I still have dreams about the cellar. About the darkness and the chains and the fear. But now when I wake, it's to Rodrigo's arms around me, to safety and love and a future brighter than any I dared dream of during those dark days. My stepfather left me in chains, broken and certain I would die there. But the Alpha King walked into that cell and said, "She's mine," and in doing so, he gave me back my life. He gave me back myself. And I took that gift, that second chance, and I built something extraordinary from it. Became a queen, a mother, leader, a survivor who became a warrior. This is my story. The story of how I went from victim to victor, from prisoner to powerful, from chained to chosen. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from it, it's this. No matter how dark your circumstances, no matter how hopeless things seem, no matter how tightly the chains bind you, you are stronger than you know. You can survive. You can heal. You can build something beautiful from the ashes of your pain. You just have to hold on long enough to meet your own Rodrigo, whether that's a person, an opportunity, or simply the courage within yourself to break free. Your chains don't define you. Your survival does. Your strength does. Your choice to keep living, keep fighting, keep believing that something better is waiting. I was left in chains in a dark cellar, certain I would die there. But I didn't die. I survived, thrived, became a queen. And if I can do it, so can you. Before you go, I need to know something. This story found you for a reason. Maybe you needed to hear about strength in the face of darkness. Maybe you needed to remember that there's always hope, even in the deepest dungeons of despair. Maybe you just needed a reminder that you're stronger than anything trying to break you. Tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. Because wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you deserve to know that someone believes in your strength. And if this story touched you, If Beatrice's journey reminded you of your own resilience, share it. Share it with someone who needs to remember that chains can be broken, that darkness doesn't last forever, that there's always someone out there who will walk into your cell and say, "You're mine to protect now." Because that's what we do for each other. We bear witness to each other's pain. We celebrate each other's survival. We remind each other that we're never truly alone. Drop that city name below. Let me send you that hug. And remember, you're not just surviving. You're building your kingdom, one brave choice at a time. Thank you for trusting me with your time. Thank you for letting me tell you Beatrice's story. Now go out there and write your own ending. Make it powerful. Make it yours. Make it